So what's it like being an autistic parent? Well, being a parent's hard, no matter whether you are autistic or whether you are neurotypical. Being a parent is hard, let's face it. But I think there's not really much said about being an autistic parent. So whether you're an autistic parent to autistic children or whether you're an autistic parent to neurotypical children, it does make life more challenging because you've already got your own needs. So for example, your sensory needs, you may find loud noises difficult, you may find smells difficult, you may find being touched difficult, all these things. And when you have a child, you have things like breastfeeding, you have smells, smelly nappies, sick, all these sort of other gross things, and they're loud. I know myself, I didn't know I was autistic when I had my son, and I found it very, very, very difficult. I also couldn't understand why for example, I set my mind on breastfeeding and I was determined to breastfeed as long as he wanted to breastfeed. So however many years that went on, I was determined to do it. And nothing would dissuade me from this fact. So I had an incredibly tough time breastfeeding. My son was tongue-tied. I had, split, cracked, bleeding nipples. I had mastitis. I had really, really hard time. I'd be in absolute floods of tears and agony, but I was determined to do it. And other people were saying, you don't have to keep doing this and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, I must. And I couldn't. I now know that that's because of my autism. I was very much set. Once I set my mind to something, I'm going to do it. That's just how I am. And also with the PDA aspect, pathological demand avoidance, I don't like being told not to do something or to change something. So I was very much like, no, the fact that you're telling me to stop doing this is going to make it worse. It's going to make me want to do it even more. So I didn't know, as I say, at the time, but so I didn't give up. I did plough through, and my son obviously carried on breastfeeding until he was around 2.5, and then he eventually just didn't want it anymore, and that was that. But yeah, so we breastfed for 2.5 years, and it was really, really, really difficult. Sorry about my sniffing, by the way. I don't have a cold. I just have terrible winter allergies. I get it every year. So I don't get hay fever, I get winter allergies, but it's the same sort of thing. Anyway, so yeah, that was really challenging, and I couldn't work out why I was so adamant about it. I mean, I know breast is best and all that, but I was so adamant about it, to the detriment of myself. And it was very, very difficult. And I had no support and no advice, and it was just pretty crap, to be honest. So there was that, and then the fact that he never slept, ever slept. So I was absolutely beyond exhausted for, about 3 years. And again, now I know he was an autistic baby. At the time, didn't know this. But I would find that really, really difficult because I'm so sensitive to noise. So the crying, it would not just get to me like it would get to anyone. It really got to me. It made me just so overwhelmed. And I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And it made my vision go. It made all my sort of vestibular issues that I've had since I was about 17, it made them just come up so much stronger. And again, I didn't know all of this was all encompassed with my autism, and I wish I'd known that. And then as he's got bigger, he's nearly 11 now. Obviously, we now know he's autistic too, which has accounted for some of his ways growing up. But regardless of autistic, neurotypical, I personally found it really, really difficult. I've found it really difficult to sort of adapt to the change of him, go through different stages as he's growing up. I've found the level of noise Noise has been probably the worst one for me. The level of noise is really difficult for me to cope with. He's a boy, he's loud, he's autistic, and he doesn't know his how to control the sound of his voice, so he comes in and he just shouts at me, and I'm like, why are you shouting? And he's like, I'm not shouting. I'm like, you are shouting. And he's and then when I sort of amplify my voice to the level of his voice to show him how he sounds, he's like, oh, I didn't know I was sounding like that. I was like, I know you didn't. So he doesn't mean to be loud, super duper loud, but he's super duper loud. And again, the demands, I find the demands really difficult of, you know, as an autistic person, I get very, very set in what I'm doing. So whether it's a special interest of mine or whether it's anything, even as something as boring as the hoovering, when I'm doing the hoovering, I don't want to be interrupted of what I'm doing at that specific moment. And it deeply troubles me to stop and have to do something else. So having a child is challenging because you have to you have to stop and do that. You can't just let them get on with it, or, you know, be in danger, or you have responsibilities. You have to go and do those things, and I find that really, really difficult and frustrating. And it's very difficult not to get angry because they're not doing anything wrong, but you're so caught up in what you're doing and what you want to do. And I know that if there are any neurotypical people watching this, I know that will sound really strange because everyone wants to do what they want to do, and everyone probably finds it annoying if you have to stop what you're doing and go and do something else. But I think for an autistic person with a PDA profile particularly, if you are that person, you'll totally get it. It hurts to stop doing what you're doing. It is really uncomfortable, and then you have to go and do this thing that you might not want to do, like, for example, change a nappy, which really smells and makes you gag, or, you know, go and, I don't know, whatever it might be, wipe someone's bottom, and then you're doing something else that makes you feel really uncomfortable, but you have to do it because you're a responsible adult and you have brought this child into the world and you love them and you have to care for them, and, you know, so it's challenging, you know. And then you have autistic children if you're an autistic person, and then it's even more challenging because they have their own sensory needs and their own ways, and they might completely clash with yours. So whereas you might be able to rationalise with a neurotypical child, say, I don't have one, so I don't know, but I'm assuming that you may be able to rationalise with them. It's harder for me to rationalise with my son because he's also struggling with his autism and his PDA issues. So, like, I have to be gentle with him. So, for example, I'll cook lunch or dinner or whatever, and then I'll be like, you know, dinner's ready. And whereas most people might just go, okay, coming, he's like, oh, he's like I was when I got distracted with something I didn't want to do. So even if he's hungry and wants to eat, he's doing something. Whatever he's doing it. So for him to transition to come down and eat food is really frustrating and challenging for him. So it's not as easy as, I just do it later. So I have to be mindful to say, oh, come on, you can do it later. Just don't be so ridiculous, because I have to remember that I know how I feel when I get distracted or I get a demand on me. So it's all those sort of things that when you were being brought up that your parents did, like, you know, like I said, just come on, do it now, do as you're told, and it doesn't matter, and blah 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 blah. When you are parenting an autistic child, you have to be aware of that doesn't work for them. You know, being strict may not work for them. I'm not saying you should let them run the, you know, show. Absolutely not. But it is a different way, and if you are autistic, then you have to remember that you find these things difficult, so it's possible that your child is also finding those things really difficult too. It's a minefield, isn't it? It really is. But yeah, so it is, if you are an autistic person and in, parenting either an autistic child and you're autistic yourself, or but perhaps your child isn't autistic, but give yourself a break, because it is harder. I do believe it is harder. I thought I was just the worst mum in the world because I couldn't give my son what he needed all the time, because I had to take a step back and look after myself. I had to look after my needs. I couldn't melt down, because if I melt down and burn out, then what's going to happen to my son? So it's very, very, very important that you obviously you have to look after their needs because they're your children, but you have to also advocate for yourself and look after yourself. And if you can, I don't have any family, I never had any family around me to help, but I have my husband, thank goodness. But if you have got family or you've got friends that can help you, then let them help as much as they can, because you need to look after yourself. I hope that helps. I actually made this video as a request from someone who is autistic and has autistic kids, because as I said earlier, and as they also said, there isn't anything really about this online, what it's like to be an autistic person as a parent, from a parent's perspective. So I hope that's helped. Please leave your comments and below, and I'll get back to you, and give yourself a break, give yourself a big massive pat on the back, and you're doing good. I'm sure you're doing good. You're doing your absolute best. Yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more autism content.